Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of AT Talks. Just Tom, your host, back with the Brain Trust for another episode of the Athletic Training Student Guide. This is episode 6. Today we're going to talk about athletic coverage versus athletic health care. So feel free to jump on in. Care versus coverage. I see Tony smiling.
You know why I'm smiling, but I'll get it started. But I want to leave the floor for them to actually provide the meat. I'm a big advocate for transition this coverage model to a care model, especially at the secondary school setting. And I think there's a lot of collegiate levels that need this same initiative to push for them as well. But right now, across the nation, we're obviously still challenged that we don't have even an athletic trainer at every single high school, right? We're all aware of that. So at minimum, we're just trying to make sure that our student athletes have access to healthcare, immediate healthcare. So I think we all agree that that is important. Um, at the same time and at same breath, having one athletic trainer at each high school doesn't allow us as athletic trainers to provide adequate, proper care. And a lot of times, especially depending on how big your high school is and depending on the demands of the sports and coaches, we find ourselves as athletic trainers not actually able to operate as true athletic trainers and providing full services. We find ourselves operating as EMTs, right? Triaging, making sure that at minimum emergency care is provided. So, yes, for me, I am a big advocate of trying to shift that model, raising the standards to care model, and hopefully, in raising the standards of care model, that will also continue to drive some of these schools who are lacking to try to keep catching up. And I'll stop right there because I do know I have a lot more to elaborate, but I wanted to allow them to share.
I want to ask a question that might hopefully clarify some stuff. What do you define as coverage and what do you define as healthcare? So that we know what the difference is. Because I know there's a disparity and I know that it's something that we need to fix. But I don't know, anybody jump in. What's your definition of athletic healthcare?
I think the coverage is being physically there at an event, right? Just being present. I think that's from a secondary school standpoint, that's what's most important to administration is making sure you're physically there at the game. But like for me, in the spring, we have half of our sports off campus as we have our city park that's literally next door, like our campus gates open into the park. So I have baseball on campus, but I have tennis, swim, softball, track and field off campus. And I have days where all that is going on at the same time. And so I cannot provide care, proper care, be there immediately if something happens at one event, if it's an emergency, as I would be able to if there were more than one of me, because I'm literally walking in circles with my traveling athletic training room in a backpack, making sure that I'm present here, I'm present here, do you need anything? And then, so that's coverage to me, is making sure that you're present, your physical presence is there, you're watching the game. But providing care, full care, as Tony mentioned, is being able to be there 100% of the time with that sport in case anything happens. Because God forbid, like I have a traumatic emergent injury and I'm off campus and I literally have to run, because right now I can't use my cart because there's so much construction. So I have to run from our track and field all the way to campus. And that takes me just running like 3 minutes. And that's 3 minutes where I could have provided immediate care. I mean, we know our coaches are supposed to be first aid and CPR certified, but let's be real. They wouldn't be able to handle those situations. So they rely on us, which is why they think it's important for us to be there. But I can't be in 5 different places at once. So I think from Tony's aspect is providing care is making sure that there's enough personnel to provide care, actual care if needed, where there's not, if someone needs to start CPR, use an AED, me being there on site already is going to be a better chance of survival than me having to get there and nobody knowing how to do CPR. So care is like providing actual services, our medical services, and coverage is just, to me, physically being present, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
For me, and just to continue to elaborate, coverage, like you said, having that physical presence of covering practices or different sporting events is typically our model, right? Because the typical coverage model is a lot of times derived to just make sure we have somebody out there to ensure that in an emergency situation, we have a healthcare provider out there to address the scene and hopefully minimize any risk of somebody dying. Or being there, just in enough time after school to maybe do a quick evaluation, determine if it's safe for them to go back and play the sport, whatever the case, and get a quick referral. That's us covering the school. We just want to make sure that it's safe. But that's not all the athletic training services that we provide, right? How many athletic trainers are actually able to come in and provide maybe a 2 to 3 hour window of treatment and rehab? Because I know that's what we went to school for, right? All of us have that opportunity. How many of us have when I'm talking about care model, also I'm talking about enforcing not just a appropriate level of staff, I'm talking about facilities too. How many of us actually come to our school and have a facility, okay, where we actually can provide not just acute care, not just chronic care, but maybe even post-op? That doesn't mean that we're taking the whole ACL case. We can still partnership with our PT clinics, but the days that they're not going to their PT clinic, we have the resources too to follow along with that post-op protocol care. Okay, how many of us have ability, models and so forth, like to be able to educate our patients thoroughly and so forth. So again, coverage to me is just putting me in a position where I'm at the school for practice events, game events, and maybe even right after school to do quick evals to just make sure it's safe. But you're not allowing me to provide the level of services that I have been trained. You're not allowing me to provide, is it 6 or 7 domains? Don't hurt me, y'all. The 6 domains of athletic training. You're not allowing me to adequately serve my community in regards to the way I've been trained to and governed to within our BOC, accreditation or certification, sorry.
Now you bring up a great point, Tony, because I'll never forget, I had one year where I literally had one lineman after another lineman after another lineman after another lineman. It was like high ankle sprain, concussion, knees, like it was literally one after the other. And it was like a mash unit. And I'm thankful that with my resources, I'm now able to have a rehab facility. But while I'm completing rehab with these 5 athletes and it's just me, no one's outside of football practice. And like, that's the thing. And some of us have been resourceful and we've taken the kids outside to do rehab and all that, but then we don't have the same resources. We have to bring everything outside to complete those things. And you bring up a valid point, because it's very difficult to be the only healthcare provider providing rehabilitation while having other things going on. And it gets harder for us when we have more than one sport, usually in the spring. Hey, Rob.
What's up, y'all? Hope I didn't miss too much.
We're doing all right, just talking about the difference between care and coverage. And
Yeah,
I like how Tony said, when you're providing care, you're actually using the things you learned in school. You're actually using the things that we were trained to do. And yeah, I agree that too many times we do fall into the, hey, I'll be the first one to say, the thing I think we need to be the best at is that emergency care. That's realistically what we need to be best at. But that doesn't mean that has to be the only thing that we are doing. We have a unique skill set, which has a very wide range of skills that we should be practicing and implementing those things. And if it's just you at the school alone, you don't have time. You don't have the time to be doing that because you are working on emergency preparedness. That's all you can realistically do, especially like when Alejandra said, if you got 5 events going on, I am rehab ain't happening that day. That's not realistic. I'm probably not making many calls to parents unless it's an emergency, but like following up with kids and making sure they're doing the things they need to do. So it's the care model is being able to actually use those skills that we've been trained and actually show our value to the school. Like, hey, this is what I can be doing. This is what we can actually provide as athletic trainers to your patient population. And I think that's one of the reasons I've been really big on Tony's message about the care and cover. And I love the program he's got going on there. And I hope that does become the standard for our profession.
And yeah, I want to add, man, this is a huge topic for me as well. And, you know, it's not much different to me between secondary school setting and the college setting, because there are tons of colleges either without an AT or they're doing a clinic outreach, so they're not traveling. And then there's some that, to be honest, some have full-time staffs and they don't travel. And I mean, I go through this a lot. And you know, for whatever reason or not, when you're talking about coverage versus care, I mean, that's a huge deal. And some people are just okay with coverage. And that's why you see them having 1 AT or, you know, even 2 or 3 with a roster size of, you know, 600 student athletes. Because a lot of the admin folks, they think as long as we got somebody that can be at the practice or at least in the building, you know, we're covered. No, that's not true. Because like right now for me, I'm down 2 people on my staff. It's only 3 of us. And we're in the process of having all sports going at the same time. There's no way I can provide the care that I want to provide. So now I have to try to be creative and do a care/coverage model, which I don't like. That's not the job. That's not what we signed up for, right?
And the athletes suffer because of that. The patients
Exactly.
suffer, and that's not good.
And like Tony and I, we talk about this all the time. You know, I pushed and strived and got to a point where we had 5 full-time people. And, you know, for certain circumstances and COVID and all that, people left or whatever. But it shouldn't be a hard decision to decipher whether you hire another athletic trainer or an admissions counselor. Right? In my opinion.
I agree.
All the time. All the time. Go ahead, T.
No, I agree. That's challenging to know that those things continue to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and to elaborate a little bit more on care versus coverage, I'll continue to provide some examples and let y'all just kind of bite off of it. But again, yes, I'm going to go cover my team for an away game. You can use that term covered. But what I'm really going is actually provide care for my student athletes. I'm not allowing the home team to just cover both sidelines, right? And trying to triage, you know, say if 2 athletes go up and my athlete dislocates their ankle and their other athlete hits their back and, you know, and maybe fractures a couple, you know, ribs or whatever the case may be. Now they got to triage and provide emergency coverage. No, I'm going to be there to provide care for my athletes. So, you know, whether it's a dislocated, hey, you can take care of your athlete. I'm a provide care for mine, right? I'm just not here to cover just to say that y'all have a medical care provider. I'm here to provide care. Or maybe it's an ankle sprain. You know, I'm actually there. We sprain an ankle. I'm gonna do a thorough evaluation. If there's any treatment that I can provide for my athlete, I'm gonna provide that treatment. I'm gonna make a decision, discuss with the parents, and you know, and make a return to play decision for this particular athlete, and give my coaches specific instructions on how to, you know, monitor this athlete while we're back in the game. That's the type of care that I'm trying to provide, and I'm not trying to put that off on the home team, you know, athletic trainer.
All right.
So again, that's just another example in trying to separate this coverage model from the care.
Yeah, to go off of that, Tony, that's how kind of I define care versus coverage. Coverage, I can show up with my bag and tape as many ankles as you want and send them all out to practice. That's it. Healthcare, you know, athletic healthcare is going a step further and coordinating with parents, other professionals, you know, doctors, surgeons, whatever, to really help guide them through that process. If it's just a simple ankle sprain, yeah, a simple ankle sprain, anybody can tape up their ankle. Coaches have been known to tape up an ankle and send them back to practice. That's coverage, maybe. But healthcare is really kind of being involved, working to the extent of our skill set and really being involved in every part of the process of healing for that patient. I just had another thought, that kind of question for you guys, maybe Rob, in the college setting. How do you encourage your administration? Like, how do we get, because we know providing athletic healthcare, switching to the healthcare model, takes the support of administration. Right. It's not just one athletic trainer saying, I'm going to do this, and then it happens. No, it's administration agreeing to hire the right people, to provide the right facilities, to provide you the time and the space you need to work to the full extent of your skill set. So how do we get administration to back us like that? Has anybody had any success with that?
So something you just said a while ago about coverage and a coach being able to tape an ankle and let them go back to practice, right? And we can provide coverage the same way. We're at the practice. If something happens, we tend to it. We let them go back to practice. You can't allow anyone outside of the allied health medical profession provide care in the same sense. For us, I know all my student athletes at that practice. So if I got one kid who's struggling because he's winded, and I have all my information, my data shows he's got sickle cell, right? I know that. Coach is not going to know that. Now, the way I try to handle it, I privy the coaches on that stuff before we start having sessions and conditioning and all that. But if I didn't do that, who's going to do? That's care. That's care. That's the difference between coverage and care. And you think that when you break it down that way to administrators, they can see the difference and they can see the value. And I'll be honest, for a long time, I thought they did. But then here now, I'm still sitting with 3 athletic trainers. I don't know if they do. I got asked the question so many times. Hey, Rob, so when we get into the spring and we got all 17 teams going, how are you going to handle that? That's a great question. And I think I told Tony this. I think I even told Alex this. In that meeting, without even trying to, I made the most unprofessional gesture I've ever done. I laughed. Andrea, I laughed.
Oh, wow.
My AD asked me that question in a meeting between her and 2 other admins. And when she asked me that, I literally looked her in the face and I laughed. Yeah. And I stopped and I paused and I said, well, if you really want me to answer that, I said, I guess the only answer I can give you is as best as possible. I mean, we'll have, and it's already been happening. We have, I think it was Friday, I had 7 practices going on at the same time. We were getting ready for a women's basketball game at home. The men had shoot around because they were going to leave the next day to go to their game. And it's like, with 3 people, how do you expect me to cover that? So technically, I just sit in the office all day long, especially with COVID. So again, I've told Tony and Alex this as well. I sit in the office. I sit in my primary athletic training facility all day long. And I'll sit there either 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours sometimes. And I'm taking care of every other team that's practicing. And my 2 assistants are taking care of my 2 basketball teams. And I can't have them in the gym while they're practicing, because if someone pops positive, then I lose them for 2 weeks to quarantine. So I'm trying my best to be creative, but in a sense, I'm doing way too much, because not only am I going through all the screenings, setting up all the testing, right, monitoring everything, I still have to treat and rehab these kids that are injured. And then I have like 5 mandatory meetings a week because of my administrative duties. So it's so much. And I cannot provide the care to the heightened bar that I've already placed on me and my staff the way I want to, because people don't understand. And it's tough.
So
That's
it's
gotta
nice
be
that you set that bar and your admin obviously recognized, like, this might be, I'm just going to ask him just sort of see what he says. And I don't know if your laugh was inappropriate or not. I mean, that's just you being honest at that point. Don.
Same thing.
Because that was
Yeah.
my reaction too when you told me that.
Yeah.
I would have asked, what are you going to do to support me? Like, how are you going to support me so that I can do my job, right? Like, I know I want Tony to touch on how he got his athletic trainers at his high school, but not every collegiate setting or not every secondary school setting can get more athletic trainers, and for whatever excuses they give you. And so we got to use other outlets, and I definitely think using the term liability and lawsuits towards administration, and making sure that they get that if I'm not there and you have a coach do this and something goes wrong, that is a huge liability on your part. So I think, a lot of people are not okay with the scare tactic, but you have to scare administration and put the fear of them getting sued and spending more money, right? It's salaries over lawsuits, I think is the saying. And
Salaries,
Yeah.
not settlements.
Yeah.
there you
based
go.
out, yeah.
Salaries, not settlements. So in my case, what one of the things I did was partner with my local sports residency through the physical therapy program. And so now I have a licensed physical therapist who is with us every year. Not only am I mentoring them, but they can assist me in providing care when I need it. And so I have someone else at my side who they're not full time, but I love the time that I do have them. And it does help because a lot of people forget that, like Rob said, we have administrative duties. My one downfall as an athletic trainer is getting my notes done, my documentation done. And I know we can all relate. Why? Because I am the only athletic trainer at a high school with, I think right now we're at 15 or 17 sports. And so I am the only one. And on a day where I have all spring sports going on at once and I'm done at 7, do I go home to my husband or do I stay and finish my notes? There's so much that we have to give, and people forget that it is so much more than providing care and coverage, because the care is our administrative duties as well. Like you guys said, having the time to call parents, having the time to follow up. This is something else I've talked about. If your athlete needs care beyond you, are you making sure they're getting that care? And calling and following up and making sure that they're getting that care. That's also time you have to take. Calling physicians, calling physical therapists, writing the documentation, sending notes, all of those things that I just don't have all the time in the world for. And it's something that I think definitely having more than one athletic trainer, as Tony said, is, whether even part-time, just something that can make sure that we provide better care than what we're providing.
Yeah. So, were you about to say something, Tom?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch real quick on what Rob was saying. It's tough, they expect everything from you, and they don't give you the resources, and that's people resources and physical equipment resources and budgets. But it's also tough because when you set the bar high and you have an expectation of here are my skills and this is what I can do for you, and you're only giving this, you start feeling underappreciated, undervalued. And then all of a sudden you're getting worn out and you're tired and you're burned out and you're laying in bed and you're thinking, man, I got to go to work this week. Nah, I don't think that's good. I think that's terrible. And we lose phenomenal athletic trainers just because we know what we should be doing and we just can't.
Right. And in my sense, Tom, the crazy part about it is I kind of I'm not gonna say I put myself in this hole, because I definitely didn't do that, right? But because I've done so much with so little for so long, like I make it happen, it's like, oh, he can take care of it.
Yeah.
Right, Alex? It's,
yeah.
Oh, Rob will take care of it. Like, dude, I can't tell you how many different like modalities and supplies and just things that I can't get with my budget, but because I call my vendors, I talk to people, people are willing to help me out. and they do. And then the college and my student athletes benefit from it. But the college sees that as, oh, that's what he does.
Yep.
I shouldn't have to do that, number one. I don't have to do that, number two. And you shouldn't think that that's adequate because I'm able to do that. And that's where the problem lies, because it's like, well, Rob helps out all the high schools in town. So if we need to get somebody PRN, oh, I know he can get somebody to cover. I don't want someone to cover. I want to give care. I don't want to call someone who I've helped, right? Because I've given care to one of the high schools because somebody was sick or out of town. I do that because I care about these student athletes.
Yep.
I do that because I care about the athletic trainers who are busting their butts at the high school, being the only one person like Alex. And I go to help, give them a sigh of relief. But I don't want to have to do that to have care for my kids. We should do that. We should have our own resources. We have everything else we need. And it's crazy because before this year, I was supposed to be hiring another. It was supposed to be 6 of us when we started men's lacrosse, right? I was told I was going to get a 5th assistant, and we was going to be 6, and everything was going to be okay. Still not perfect, but we can deal with that. And that didn't happen. And then COVID hit, and then financial issues hit. And now I'm half of what I'm supposed to be, and it's still, oh, you can handle it. You can take care of it. I'm like, all right, we'll see what happens,
Yeah. To try to continue to answer your question, one of the first things I say as athletic trainers, we got to collect data and so forth. Well, we got to identify the problem, right? We have to, when we're going to our administrators, and even with identify a problem, that doesn't mean that they may see it as a problem, but you got to identify what your issues are within your program. Okay. And I agree with Alejandra, start with liability. Like if you have problems with your school where you're liable for different lawsuits because things aren't being addressed appropriately, that's one of the first areas that I would agree to a touch base on, period. Secondly, again, create your data. If you're seeing these many athletes or if you can show how many athletes aren't getting care, right? If you can show how many athletes aren't returning back to care, returning back to sport in a timely fashion because they're lacking service, again, present that data because that is a problem, okay? Surveys, if your patients aren't satisfied with care, even though that they may put in a comment, Mr. Hunter is the best athletic trainer, but I have a hard time getting to him. That's important for your administrators to know, because if students is the most important thing to them, then they're going to try to address that. And I say that, for example, because I just had an opportunity to meet with my administrator and my principals, and that is the case. Students is her first priority. So if she doesn't feel like her students is being taken care of, she wants to know what things can be addressed to make sure that that's the case. So I have to also take that, knowing that that's her priority, to figure out how I can get my needs met. So I express that as a really key point for you all. You really also have to figure out what's important to administrators. Even though you know what's important to you, you got to figure out what's important to them. And through that, you got to learn how to navigate and figure out, well, if I can meet their needs, how can I meet their needs to get my needs? And I say that also not just with administrators, but also within whatever companies you work with. All right, you have to know how your company ticks. If your company is worried about the bottom line, well, you need to figure out how to affect their bottom line to get what you need. So if your company is worried about referrals, trust me, we don't need to just be referring just to be referring, but you need to figure out, you need to look at your cases a little bit more thoroughly and figure out, well, how can my PT action company help me? Let me refer these cases because you know what, this PT is really good at that. So I need to be a lot more conscious and a lot more aware of what cases I need to refer so that bottom line is met. So when I come to you and say, hey, I'm bringing you this amount of money, I need more care. I need another AT. And I guarantee if you give me another AT, this money will rise, because there's actually a lot of cases that have slipped through the crack because I'm by myself. I got 800 athletes, and you know what? They know I'm busy. They don't come to me, so I didn't get the chance to refer. give me another athletic trainer. Matter of fact, give me a third athletic trainer and let me capture these cases to refer. So again, knowing your company, knowing your administrator's goals and what they are passionate about can really help you navigate, but you have to know the system. So those are some things that I throw out there as some advice when you go to your administrators to hopefully change the atmosphere and get them on board with helping you and supporting you. Oh, will it all work? I can't guarantee that, but those are some strategies that I say take to them.
Yeah, no, you got to talk their language. That's the main thing. And if you want, one of the talks I saw at NATA one year was talking about doing a SWOT analysis of your athletic training program, which go over your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, and then present that kind of information to them. Like, hey, this is what we're good at in this room. This is where we could do a little bit better. Here's some, if I had another AT, these are the opportunities that we could actually meet. And hey, the threats, that's where that liability word comes in. And like, hey, this is what we're leaving ourselves open to. But yeah, we got to start learning how to talk that language a little bit better. And that's something, and it's not something that you learn in your athletic training education. So don't say, oh, I didn't learn that in my athletic training education. Guess what? Neither did Tony. He didn't learn that there. He went out and did it himself. He just went out and did it. Just like,
Wow.
Yeah, he just worked his butt off. And there, I mean, that's where that stuff comes from. So you don't learn everything from your athletic training education program. That gets you enough to pass the BOC. When you learn how to become an athletic trainer after you pass that, and you're on your own for a few months or a few years or whatever, and then you become an AT.
That's a very good point, Mark. And then I think that data doesn't have to be numbers only, right? It's like your SWOT analysis. I think something that we do is we give our admin end of the year survey, like how did Alex do? But I've been thinking about, as Tony mentioned, giving our athletes an end of the year survey because they're the ones we are serving.
They're our
Right?
customers.
Like, I can't tell you how many times my volleyball girls complain because the athletic training room is full of football boys and I'm the only one and they need to be serviced. And I'm like,
did you just mention Title IX there? I'm sorry. Is that what you just said?
Right, but those are things that
you want to get stuff done in a school. Say that word Title IX, and you get a lot of stuff done really quickly.
But that's the thing that administration doesn't see because they're gone by 3 p.m. Right? They're gone. I mean, we have one that stays after school because like till 5 because they're usually AP over athletics, but they usually only stay if we have an event that they need to be present for. But they don't see all the things that goes into our care after school, specifically in the secondary school team, but even in the collegiate, they're not in their athletic training room watching what you do and the actual care that you provide. And that, I think that's something I'm going to incorporate is an end of year survey for my athletes. What can I do to better assist you or better serve you? Because at the end of the day, it's them that I'm there for. It's them I'm providing the care for, and it's them that they matter the most, not my administration. It's about not the coaches, it's about the athlete and making sure they're getting the care that they need. And
if you need a form, Alex, I've been doing that for the last 8 years.
Send it over.
8 years.
I'm gonna need one of those forms as well.
I've been getting your emails now, Rob, so send it over.
But at the end of each season, each student athlete gets a form and they answer all the questions, and those forms come back to me and I read them all. I sign off on them all. If they felt like they still had an injury that wasn't taken care of properly, if they feel like they need to see the docs, all that stuff is in there. So yeah, I'll put a link up some kind of way in the message. How about that?
Why'd you start doing that out of curiosity, Rob? Is that something you just came up with randomly? You just saw a need that you needed filled, or is that something someone taught you, or where did that come?
No,
that's a phenomenal idea. I love it.
So what happened was, we as staff, we always have evaluations, right? And then our coaches have evaluations with the AD, right? And over time, I wanted to know what my students were thinking about my staff and myself, right? As far as our care goes. Because, you can hire somebody, they can be great clinically, but you don't really know how the rapport is with the student athletes. And at some point when I got a little bit busier because I got more roles, I wasn't seeing that. And I would hear things, but the student athletes are always a little bit afraid to come to you with an issue. right? But I want to know, did the staff provide the proper care for you? Do you feel like you were properly taken care of? Do you feel like there's a great report? If you had an issue and you brought it to us, because still have a lot of kids that go outside of medical coverage without letting me know. And part of that is because that's how they're brought up, to be honest. Part of that is if most of my kids, if they sprain their ankle at practice, they're going to call mom and dad. Mom and dad going to say, well, come home so we can get you to the doctor. And I've been trying to avoid that for years upon years upon years. And it still happens now, not at a great rate, but it does happen. And for me, I think that directly correlates with the care that we're giving them. So when you got injured, was my staff not there to properly suit you? Did you report it? Some of it's not even about the staff. Some of it was, did you do your part, right? So at the end of the year, they fill that out, and like probably about 8-9 years ago, I thought about doing that, and I actually had one of my assistants who was big into counseling and stuff like that, and I had her come up with some stuff. I read over it, and we rearranged the questions, and now I do it at the end of every season.
Do you do them anonymous, or do you put names on?
No. Nope. So here's the thing, and we tell the athletes this: I need to know who it is, because if you need further care,
that's why I thought of that, because I was like, you asked about further care potentially,
Yep.
and you need to see a doctor for something. I was
Yep.
like, so it can't be anonymous, but I just wanted to check.
Now, but they do know that my staff, the evaluation doesn't go to them; they come to me.
Okay.
So they can feel comfortable if they don't want them to find out that they gave them a bad remark, which has never happened. Gladly to say that, but they can feel comfortable that if they did have to give a negative remark, that I would have a one-on-one conversation with my staff and they wouldn't be involved.
That survey drives a couple things. It obviously gives Rob, the head of the sports med program, an idea of areas that you can improve.
Right.
Obviously, if it's areas that you can't control, like I just didn't have access because football is going on, and I'm a volleyball team, right? Just like Alejandra brought up, and I just didn't have access to the room, or nobody else was in there to help. Even though Alejandra's great, but I just can't get to her. Information that you can't control, right, needs to go to your admin. Like, well, the needs aren't being met because I don't have enough hands. For me, collecting that data, having that information present is huge for you all, and trying to drive the motivation for your administrators to drive them to be able to actually support you, or not even support you, to take care of their students if that's their number one priority.
That's a priority, And every now and then you'll get a cross country kid that's upset because no one travels with cross country, and I have to let them know, look, I have to do things based on the risk levels, right? So yeah, if we're hosting cross country, we're there. But if you go to Macon and you're running a Mercer event, Mercer's going to take care of you. They're going to contact me and let me know if something happened. But they're like, well, athletic trainers travel with football and volleyball, and and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I deal with those too. But you still have to read that, right? And I still let administration know that, hey, cross country wants somebody to travel with them. I'm just letting you know that. So I love if I can have someone travel with every single team, every single event. That's what we're talking about, right? But we know that's not feasible with the size of staffs that we have.
That builds up your reputation and your presence in your school community. I mean, when I was our basketball team, I used to go to their away games all the time. We were told not to travel. I was like, if I got no events, I'm going to go over and check out what's going on. And the parents see that, the kids see that, the assistant coaches see it. Everyone starts to, they're like, oh, this guy's coming around a lot. Like it builds that trust and builds that sense of, hey, this guy actually cares about the kid, actually cares about what he's doing.
That's really important, Mark, because we build these relationships with our kids, whether it's in the collegiate setting, the secondary school setting, and they want us to travel. Like Rob said, I have my kids tell me all the time, will you travel with football? And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's a really high risk sport. I have volleyball, which are on not days on football, and they're home. So, but when I can travel, I do travel, and my kids appreciate it 100%. Not only if they need anything, but because I'm there to support them and I'm watching their game. It's those relationships that you can build that also go a very long way.
Yeah. And it's funny for me because in my conference, we got, I think we're still at about 18, 19 schools. I'm the only school that traveled with volleyball. Only one. And I've traveled tennis when I had enough people. And, and they're not used to that. And it was so funny. One time I sent my assistant with tennis. They get to the venue and their admin asked her to cover the match so their AT can go somewhere else. I'm like, no. Number one, we're not licensed in your state. Number two, she's there to take care of our team, not yours. I'm sorry. Like, if you want to pay her an hourly rate to be a first responder, we can talk about that. But no, you can't. It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
That brings up a real good point, Rob, of when coverage might actually be appropriate. The appropriate term and actions in that situation would be coverage, because these are not your athletes. Say you're hosting an event and you have a visiting team that doesn't have an athletic trainer. The most I'm gonna do, one from a legal standpoint, because I don't have a consent to treat for these visiting athletes. I don't know their medical histories. The most I'm gonna do is basic first aid, is coverage and refer. So when thinking of care versus coverage, that the one time I could really advocate for just doing coverage is on those visiting athletes. And then when you're faced with that situation of, oh, well, you're an athletic trainer and we've got 10 teams at this cross country event, or 20 teams at this tennis match, why don't you take care of all of them?
Yep.
Well, no.
And don't it grind your gears though? Like sometimes, for me anyways, I get, and it's a little personal too, because there's some schools that are so close and I'm like, why y'all don't travel? But whatever. Yeah. But they don't come with their team. And then number one, they want to send you this long list of things to do for them. Like not long ago, I ain't gonna speak about long ago because I'll leave it at that. I had a list one time for a volleyball match. They wanted 12 girls to have their ankles taped. Y'all, how many plays volleyball at a time? I'm sorry. Like, so you're not going to use ankle braces. You didn't tape them before they left. And again, don't get me wrong. I don't mind helping the students out because it's not their fault. Mm-hmm. It's really not their fault. But I feel bad sometimes when, and we have a conference rule that if your AT didn't send me that list within 24 hours and you're not on it, I can't touch you. And those kids get so upset. And then they make a call. Now I'm on the phone with the AT because I know him personally. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to send it. Can you take? Okay, all right. So it's kind of like we make the rule and then they break the rule. So it's like, why we got the rule in the first place, right?
Yeah, we have that.
Right. Then I had this happen. This was the worst. This is the absolute worst. A team came down from about 6 hours away, I'll say that. And their star player, 5 minutes left in pregame warm-up time, comes up to my assistant and says, hey, can you check my knee out? I think I heard it yesterday because they played another institution the day before. 5 minutes before game time. And this girl's limping. And she's like, well, I mean, we only got 5 minutes before the game. And she tells the coach, like, coach, your kid says she just hurt her knee and it's 5 minutes for the game. I'm not sure what you want me to do. I need to call my boss. So she called me and I told him, like, hey, you tell him, like, 5 minutes before the game, there ain't nothing you can do about it. It's his decision whether she plays or not. Oh, he got upset.
No, we have that same issue.
He got so pissed. And it led to a bad relationship that I didn't even know was bad between me and the AT at that school as well, which I didn't even know we had a bad relationship about it, but found out she had some nasty words to say about me. And I'm like, but y'all created that. That wasn't our fault. You can't, I don't have pixie dust. We couldn't sprinkle pixie dust on her 5 minutes before the game start. So she sat out the first half and they tried to play her and she couldn't play. But that's because you didn't bring someone to provide her care. My assistant was there to provide my team care in your team coverage because you weren't there.
Yep.
And I tell them, even if they get hurt during the game, we'll pull them out, we'll evaluate them, we'll tell them, you know, worst case scenario versus this, so we can push that information on to their AT. But at the end of the day, coach, this is your decision whether they play or not. I can't make that decision. And it's like they don't get it.
Yeah. And I won't make that decision.
No, definitely will not.
Yeah.
Now, imagine all of that in California.
Ooh.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you how many times is in our district. We're in the second largest school district in the nation. There are only 9 of us on paper, currently 6 employed full-time athletic trainers in our entire district, in the second largest district in the nation.
If you had to guess the number of student athletes.
I have that number somewhere, Rob, and it's in the thousands, like 5-figure, no, 2, 3, yeah, 5-figure numbers. But there was, I'll never forget this game, football game. Their athlete opponent, the school never has anybody on the sideline. And so when the visiting team comes, I'm the one that's there. And every time it's like a concussion deal. And thankfully I have a neurologist on their sideline, and they go and but like we're providing that. But then what happens after we tell the coach this kid needs further follow-up? They're not going to get that follow-up. They're not, because it's the coach's decision. 1, 2, they don't have anybody at the school. They just have a school nurse. They don't have anybody to follow up with. I had this one situation where a kid tore his ACL. It was his senior year. He had a soccer scholarship. He was playing football. And we did the eval, and you know, he was done. I had to say, you're like, no ACL, gone, completely gone. Like you're not gonna go back in. And what was he gonna get care after that? He was most likely gonna go to urgent care or to the emergency room after that. Who knows how long it was gonna take for him to get an MRI? Who knows how long it was gonna take to schedule that surgery? And so like even those situations here, specifically in California at the secondary school level, a lot of secondary school levels across the nation, high schools don't have athletic trainers. So it can be the same situation at many other high schools. And, you know, we are the Wild Wild West. We don't have the licensure. So I can provide what I can provide as a first responder. But at least in other states, they can get further care after, because they may have another athletic trainer or something. But it's difficult out here to do any of that. And that's something that we're pushing with data, right? We're working with the district to provide data. It was released that our district finally hired an athletic training director for our district, because, you know, this nonprofit over here has been doing a lot of the work in providing the data and working with our district to prove that even just a part-time, like we just need something to assist these kids to provide some kind of care. Although we know it's part-time, it'll most likely end up being coverage, but you know, it's a double-edged sword. We got to take the win. We're providing enough data to at least get the correct healthcare professional there, to provide some kind of care. I can't tell you how many situations that I've had to provide care to opposite team because they don't have anybody. And then they ask, well, how did Dorsey get you? And then it's like, well, nonprofit, but there's only so much you can do with a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit because they're getting money, donations. And if we don't have enough money, then we can't provide any more athletic trainers.
So let me shift the another viewpoint on why I believe the care model and building sports medicine programs is not just important for the student athletes, but important for our profession, right? You leave us out there on the island alone, you know, you're gonna get burnout, right? There's a lot of turnover, high turnover rate for our profession, a lot of burnout for our profession, right? So we're talking about retention for our profession. Well, you leave us by ourselves, it's really hard to retain us to want to continue to pursue this profession. So one of the reasons why I advocate for building sports medicine programs and moving forward to the care model is that we do, acquire enough athletic trainers within the high school, within the college, or with whatever work setting, so that, we can share the burden, right? So that we can build a program where we can actually, it fosters an environment where we can actually thrive. Okay. So even for us as a profession, at my school right now, it's nice to have 3 other people to bounce ideas off of, right? To communicate cases, to have second opinions in-house, to share the burden of the schedule. Oh, if somebody, kid, at home is sick, especially with time of COVID, they're kicking them out of the daycare, to pick up the burden.
Yeah.
So it's important to have all that, so, and when you have that environment and you have that support, well, then, yeah, I'm gonna stay in this environment. I can do this. This is what I was trained. We were trained to understand how to operate within a sports medicine umbrella and provide athletic training services. We weren't trained to just go provide by ourselves at a school, right? So again, for our profession, I think it's important. Also think about our student age, right? I think Alejandra was talking about the newsletter, NATA newsletter, about how secondary schools,
They're supposed to save
us, right? Well, here's the thing. If I was a student and I saw an athletic trainer doing 60, 80 hours a week by themselves, just trying to keep their nose above the water because their head ain't coming above, why would I want to pursue that profession?
Yep.
Right? But if I see a program like Chris Galloway, who's in Texas, who has like 6, 7 ATs at the high school, and I see them working within this sports medicine program and thriving as a support another, well, I want to be a part of that and do athletic training. So now I'm going to go to school for that. But why would I go to school when I have this one athletic trainer who's like, I don't make enough money for this? Why would I want to pursue this profession?
Yeah.
So I think, changing changing this model and also pushing for a sports medicine program will be great. My last point that I want to highlight, if I set the standard that every high school needs at least 4 to 5 athletic trainers. Now, all those schools that don't have athletic trainers, at minimum, obviously they got to get that one, but then they won't stop because the standards that are set by your state, your regional, your national organization, if the standard's been lobbied that you need 4 to 5, well, once they get they one, they still got to keep working because now they got to get 2, now they got to get 3. So I'm still not trying to neglect the schools that don't have one, but if your standards stay low, the moment you get one, those ADs and principals is like, leave me alone. Because y'all told me all we needed was 1. But if you tell them 4 to 5, now it's like, all right, we got 1, but they still, we still got to find a way to get 2 because we're still behind because 4 to 5 is actually the standard.
So,
and that's what I believe we need to push that.
I want you to talk about, because I can already hear in the back of my head a lot of the athletic trainers saying, well, how the hell did you afford to get 4 athletic trainers? Like, where is the money coming from? So let people know how you accomplished that and what resources you took advantage of at your high school.
So again, my school has 15 or 16 high schools in the district. So as of right now, it's really hard for me to advocate. It is hard for me to advocate until I continue to collect the data that's necessary that every school needs to purchase 1 or 2 athletic trainers within the district, right? So I'm in the process of this data that we're talking about. That's a process for me right now. So then I got to look at my community sources. We got a lot of hospitals here that are providing athletic trainers. Well, they're providing athletic trainers because they want referrals. So that's what they're looking at. So I got an athletic trainer from my hospital. They're looking for referrals, right? X-rays, initial evaluations, casting, MRIs, and surgeries. That's what they want. So I said, okay. So for me, I provided data on how many cases we weren't referring to their hospitals because we didn't have enough hands. I let them know what doctors they were going to, right? why they, and then also followed up, why you didn't want to go, so I let them know. Well, because there was no athletic trainer at this game. So my dad knew, this other physician. So that's why we went there. Oh, okay. So I want y'all to know that we're not capturing these cases because we don't have anybody out there to be present. Okay. And then I also showed them the data of how many cases we're actually dealing with. So with all that information, it was like, okay, we're going to give you another athletic trainer and we're going to do a trial run. And obviously we want to see if these numbers go up. So by giving me 2 athletic trainers from this high school, from the hospital, the numbers rose because now we're covering more games. We're providing more care. I'm building more rapport with my community now because they see us out there all the time now. Now I'm building more trust with my my student athletes who are my patients and also their parents. I'm building more relationship with my coaches because they see it. Okay. So those numbers grown. Now I have a PT clinic. Man, Walton, I see what y'all are doing. I see the level of care. I see the resources you have. We want a part of that. We would like to assist you all with providing therapeutic services. Okay. So they're looking for referrals also. So again, I'm still stuck with the bottom line, which is fine. I get the system. Okay, you want me to refer? You want us to be our sole provider? I'm okay with that. For one, first thing though, you need to show me that your PTs are able to provide the quality of care I'm looking for. I'm just not going, I'm not referring to you if you can't do that. So we did a little trial run, 6 months, feedback. They're providing great service. Okay, we can move forward, but before we move forward, I need another athletic trainer. Make you the sole provider if I don't get anything out of this. And they're like, well, if I give you another athletic trainer, y'all gonna take all the rehab cases. No, we're not. Trust me, we're gonna provide care for athletes, but I'm not trying to consume all the cases. But I'll let you know one thing. If I have somebody from your clinic here every day, I will be sitting down with that particular person, making sure that we're discussing these cases and making sure that that person is able to filter the ones to your program. I guarantee you that. Right now, even through this pandemic, our school is a factor in assisting the other ATs that are at these other schools. We're keeping them numbers up, not just for the AT that's at my school, but for the ATs at the other schools, right? Because again, their expectation is to have 4 referrals a month. Well, we're hitting that. That's not a problem for my school because we're capturing the cases. So I'm gonna stop rambling. My biggest thing was again, knowing how these companies knowing what these companies want, meeting their needs so that I can meet my needs. And I'm gonna let y'all know right now, I have 4 people on staff. I am trying to find a way to get number 5. I also know, for example, I'm a CTAE teacher. If I can get my student count up and get these FTE dollars up, that puts me in a position that I can advocate for another athletic trainer hired by my school. So I'm tapping into all different types of resources to get to what I need.
Write that blueprint up and sell it.
Yeah, see, I've had some conversations lately with my boss. I'm employed third party through a hospital and contracted with the school. And we're trying to start a CTE program through the school, sports medicine. And the hospital has given some pushback because they're concerned that if I give time to this program, I won't have the time to deliver the care I should be delivering. But it's hard to sell people who have a different mindset on, hey, if we get this program up and running and there's more funds, there's more resources, we have more equipment, all that is going to lead to better care. All that can lead to a second athletic trainer. It can lead to that better coverage, better care. I the first couple of years I was at my school, I remember I went to tennis and they're like, why are you here? What's wrong? I was like, I'm just here to say hello, see if everyone's alive and okay and everyone's shoulders feel good. And what's up? I'm Tom. And then that spring I went to track and field and they're like, why are you here? Like, because you're my kids and I want to say hello and make sure everyone's okay. And like, there's a lot of places that they'll neglect some of those teams because they're so busy and they're so overran. And it's like healthcare, health coverage. even at their own home, let alone when they play all these other schools. Like Alex said, in my conference, I'm the only full-time AT. So we'll play these home games and kids will come in hurt and they want someone to take care of them because they don't have anybody to take care of them. Or they go on, or your kids go on the road and you're like, I hope nothing happens tonight because they don't have nobody, coach. It's just you. Call an ambulance. So there's a lot of just crazy factors that we have to play all these different games just so we can hopefully, potentially provide the level of care that we're trained and educated on. It's just blows my mind.
It's true, but it is funny that, like you say, when you show up to tennis practice, it's like, what's wrong? Did I do something wrong? Like, no, man, I'm here to, in case something happens.
Our tennis team had a Saturday match. I showed up. They're like,
what are you doing here?
yeah.
That's how my swimming team and my tennis team feel anytime I'm like, I'm there. They're like, what happened? You heard? I'm like, no. I think one last point I want to make, everything we're talking about, Mark mentioned, it was never taught to us. And I think one thing that I really want to tell YPs and new graduates is that you have to do the footwork. And I was reminded this the other day, athletic training is more than skills, providing physical, manual skills. Advocating for your athletes is also going out into your community and seeing what partnerships you can build to provide resources for your athletes. It's tedious, it's a lot of work, but at the end run, it's going to end up helping you because it's going to take a little bit of your burden off and you're going to have more resources to lessen that burden, right? Like me reaching out to the local PT sports residency, me just reaching out to a hospital that's a train right away. And now I've been referring more cases to them. And, but I wouldn't have done that if I didn't do the research or the footwork that I needed to do to know what's available in my community and how I'm all about manipulating the system. I think Tony and I have learned, we got what we got because we learned how to manipulate the system to benefit our student athletes. It's not benefiting, it's benefiting us, yes, because we have resources, but the resources are for our athletes. And so I think as a new grad, as a YP, it's unfortunate that we have to do the footwork, but in doing the footwork, you build networking, you build rapport with MDs, with NPs, with any other healthcare providers that you're meeting along the way, and then you build these relationships and you have them in case you need anything else if you go somewhere else down the road. So think about doing those kinds of things and building those relationships in your community that can end up benefiting your student athletes and the care that you provide them.
And I'm glad you brought it back up too, because I believe they need to start talking about some of this stuff in the ATS. Honestly, I mean, what we're talking about is nothing new. It's not something that just the people on this call go through. All ATs go through this, right? And even if it's not a subject matter, I think the disconnect comes when a lot of curriculum directors or people that teach in the AT programs, they weren't clinical ATs for a long time. So they're not used to this stuff. But they need to, reach out and talk to some people, because I think it would benefit the students a great deal to understand this may be the situation you might be in. And here's some ways how to fix that. Because like we've all said, the things we go through, some folks will jump ship quick. And I've seen a lot of folks leave the profession because of that. Not knowing where to get help from, not knowing how to handle it, not knowing what to do. And I think it's a disservice for them not to hear that in their programs.
And even if coming from like a clinical director thought process, it's difficult to change your curriculum. I understand that, but it's super easy to have someone become a preceptor. And so you can be wise as to who you make your preceptors.
Right.
If you keep making these well-off high schools with nothing but white athletes your clinical sites, your athletic training students are not going to be that great of athletic trainers when they get out of college.
It's not reality.
It's not a reality at all. And so as an athletic training student, bring this up to your clinical director, your program director. Can I get a more diverse clinical site? Can I ask them? If you ask, they'll know that you need this, especially if you're an athletic training student of color. But it's even more important for our white athletic training students to be put into that diverse population because they're going to be treating students of color. And so picking that preceptor, that clinical site is key, because if you can't teach in that curriculum, then maybe you can get in a clinical site who does these kind of things that we're talking about, and then they can learn it at that clinical site.
Great point.
I mean, think about how many hours do we spend at our clinical sites? I mean, those are conversations you should be having with your precept. You should be, and I think I was like 15 or 1600 hours when I had to do my program, or somewhere around there. We had conversations with my preceptors about just, hey, what do you think about the job? Where do you see this stuff going? It shouldn't just be all school all the time. I mean, you guys should have some real conversations, similar to what Tom sort of created this network where he can have these conversations every day. And thank you for recording these, by the way, because then I can go back and watch what the hell I said at some point in time, and listen to what Tony said, and listen to what Rob said, and Alejandra and Andrea and you, because I mean, you forget stuff. So, you know, you're creating this database for people. This is like a freaking cheat code for some folks coming up.
You're right.
I do want to add one more thing that I just reminded myself of, because if I am the only athletic trainer and you want to make me a preceptor, but I got to cover all these teams, I'm going to feel like a shitty mentor because I'm going to be too busy trying to stay afloat instead of really assisting this young athletic training student. And that's also going to make them not want to go into the secondary school setting.
Yes.
And so that goes back to what Tony said, you know, having more than one athletic trainer present allows us, if you want to make me a preceptor, I need that help. And that way you don't just use the student as labor. You're using them as a student, and you're being a true mentor instead of an unpaid GA. So
Yeah.
I think that's also a point.
That's a great point. I mean, you talk about when you by yourself, you're not intentionally trying to use people as labor, but when you hear, it's like, you hear, how can you help?
Oh, you know how to tape
Now I
ankle?
gotta-
Go ahead, grab some tape, hop in.
I mean, that's reality. And you and you're like, hey, you're gonna have to just kind of be thrown with the wolves and kind of learn, you know, be in this fire and go.
Yeah.
But it's still a great experience too, though. And they
It
need
is.
it. So
Yeah.
it's, you scratch my back, I'm gonna scratch yours.
Right.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
'cause I tell mine day one, like, when you come here, this is your job. Like, that's how we're gonna treat it. Now, I will never ask you to do anything I wouldn't do myself. Won't ever do that. And I'll always be there to answer questions and be your supervisor, because that's what the preceptor is there for. But I want you to get a real life experience of how it's gonna be. I want to be at the game and watch you in the dugout, right? Go through an issue on, you got to go through, you know, your skills and your knowledge of deducing or deducting what you need to do. I want to see you do that. Now, if I see you struggling, yeah, I'm gonna come in and help. But I need to see you struggle, because that's how we learn. If you think you know it all, I can't teach you anything. And if you don't ask questions, I don't know what you don't know. And I tell them that day one. And then I get 100 questions a day. But I love it.
We just pivoted to a whole new topic. This is another hour. This is another hour in itself, talking about how we deal with our students as preceptors and all of that. I mean,
Yeah, that's another topic for another day. But
doesn't every conversation lead to the next like that, though?
Absolutely, and that's what's so nice about these
Sunday.
relationships.
See Tom taking notes over there. He's raised like
Sunday.
preceptor and student AT relationships.
I already got preceptor on the Excel sheet master list. Preceptoring, it's its own topic. But you know, like, in these athletic trainers, you got to understand that no one else is going to build that program for you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to build it, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of your energy, and it's going to take a lot of resources. And when you're having, like, you're not going to go from East Chicago, which is where I work, to Walton High School in 2 years. And it ain't going to happen. You got to lay some foundation, and go to town over and over and over again, and slowly push that program up. And when you have these schools where every year they have a different athletic trainer, you can't build no program when you got turnover every year, every 2 years, every 3 years. That's not how great programs are made.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all the schools where you're like, oh, we're playing them at their place. Why don't you just schedule that here?
Yeah, it took me 6 years to get what I have. I started off with close to nothing. And 6 years later, how long did it take you, Tony?
Well, so I came into a good situation. It's by the grace of God. I knew when I was taking a job that we were about to partnership with the hospital, and I also knew that we were going under school. School was going under construction, so I knew there was going to be a facility opportunity, and I knew there was going to be room to grow. And for me, honestly, that 4 years, even though I say 4 years, when it comes to construction, there's going to be a time where they're willing to spend big money, and that's it, right? And also with the new partnership, it's like they get stuff established and then that's it.
Yeah.
Aggressive. While we were in this change, let me get my budget high as possible so I can get all the equipment, because I know I'm not going to be able to ask for anything else, after that's all said and done. So that's the reason why it kind of happened, and it happened quickly. But again, because of my mentoring that I've received, I knew to try to push hard, right away. And just to add to you all got to be willing to grind. Some of my younger mentees, there's this mindset of I got my degrees and I'm coming into the setting, and you have this entitlement that, things should be a certain way. And we're trying to let you all know right now that not every situation is going to be the way you think it's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to put in hours for the benefit of your program. And I say that, and I try to say that with caution though, because I don't be working overtime for your coaches and for your administrators. What I'm talking about is that overtime is for me. That overtime is for what I'm trying to do to build the program. So I'm not about to come in 3 extra hours for coach because they want to go outside of my coverage schedule. But I actually may come in too early because I need to sit down and get these policies and procedures written up the way I want them to be. Or I need to make these calls, like Alejandra said, to some of these companies and try to get these meetings set up throughout the week so I can build it. I'm going to make that extra time for me.
Yeah.
Because I know in the long run, hopefully, I will see the fruits from my labor and be able to enjoy the fruits from my labor. But that's for me. So I say that in caution, be careful with your overtime work.
Yeah. I don't even know how long we've been talking for, guys.
Well, what time is it now? Let's see. 2
12:08.
o'clock Central. Yeah, probably about an hour 15, hour 20. Yeah, and I have that same caution when we talk about. I travel a lot. I really enjoy traveling. I like for my kids and my coaches to see me and know that I'm there to take care of whatever. But also, I'm one human being. So if the new expectation is you got to travel with all the sports, well, that's not realistic. Or you can put yourself in that hole where you traveled, and then, like, I think last Tuesday my kids were like, "Hey, you going to Hammond High?" And I was like, "No." I was like, I'm gonna have the practices here. Once it's over, I'm going home. We got basketball home like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm gonna see you plenty. So it's also very tricky, and for every individual, it's gonna how much you're willing to bend on some things and not bend on others. Is we're all different, fluid human beings, but you got to be willing to give something somewhere.
Yeah. Work-life balance. That
unless
balance is really important.
Yeah. Unless you're one of the lucky few that just happens to walk into the perfect place at the perfect time with this, where it's all beautiful, and you're like that third, fourth, fifth athletic trainer. Well, a lot of those jobs aren't out there, and when they open up, there's a lot of competition. So if you're a fresh out of school person, you're going to be facing people with 10, 15, 20 years experience, because they want those. You get those and retire there.
But there had to been a director there to get that program the way it is, though. Somebody had to work for you to walk into such a nice environment, and and you, Alejandra said that work-life balance. Don't get me wrong. When I talk about sacrifice and building programs, sometimes building a program is put myself out there and covering more. But I also need to make sure I'm not opening up a Pandora box where, these expectations get to such a level that I can't consistently meet it and be reasonable for me and my family. And that's a very tough line to.
But you bring up a good point, because like in my district, when I do go travel and I am everywhere, everyone wants to know, well, how can we get an athletic trainer? And so you're promoting the profession in reality, and you're advocating by being present everywhere you go. And that, I can't tell you how much that's, even with like teaching programs. Well, how can we get a sports medicine program like yours here? And then how can we use that to benefit and also get an athletic trainer? And so it's marketing yourself by being present is also really huge and can build that rapport in the community.
Anything else, Tom?
Yeah, I was gonna say, anybody else want to do any kind of closing statements and wrap this up, get out of here, and party time. Let's go. Up to y'all.
I'll say that.
Y'all said it already. I'm just here for the ride.
I just want to tell the athletic training students, like, don't be hesitant to reach out. I think that was a big issue of mine, is I know people are busy, and so like I didn't want to have to reach out, but do it. Like, don't be scared to ask. I mean, if you guys don't follow us on Twitter, like, we can put our email somewhere. I could probably put my email on the screen, but like, reach out. If you want to build and start a sports medicine program, or you want, to have a model like Tony has at his high school, like, reach out to people that are doing this. Don't be scared to reach out for mentorship. I straight up told people, you're mentoring me now. Like, you have the time because I need a mentor. You're it. Like, don't be scared to reach out as a new grad, or, a young professional, to people who are doing it. And do you have the time? Like, if I don't have the time, I'll tell you, I don't have the time this week, but remind me next week, and then I can get with you on a Zoom call or something. Like, don't be scared to reach out for the resources that you need.
And I was going to say, since the topic was talking about care versus coverage, go ahead and write out what you feel like care is, and hold yourself to that standard. Because I think y'all, I don't know, y'all tell me if y'all think I'm wrong. I think some people didn't think that there was a difference. And maybe the first time they heard it is when they watched this video. But you need to know there is a huge difference between care and coverage. And for you to know how you want to give that care, you might want to make a checklist of things that are important to you, things you need for you, your staff, or even if you're by yourself. And that way you have it all thought out already before you get into a situation. And you can check those things off as you go. I need this. Let me figure out how to get this. And I get that, I check it off, and then you just keep going and keep building. That's how you create that bar.
Yeah, the process never stops. As soon as you get to what you thought was the next level, and then you go for the next level and next level, and you just keep rocking and rolling like that. Hey, so I appreciate everybody spending like 2 hours of their day on here talking to this bum, me being the bum, because y'all are awesome and smart, and I'm just a normal human being. So hey, thanks for your time. Have a great Sunday. Stay safe, and just keep crushing it. Thank you very much.
Hi.
Yeah, always a pleasure.